Hi Heather, this is Katie, and I'm just replying to your comment and question about how I do the myofascial stretches on my own. So originally I had a specialist that did it for me, acupuncturist that also had myofascial training, and she taught me how to do this by myself. So I don't recommend trying it without going to a specialist first, just because I don't want to tell you how I do it, and then if you try it, then you get hurt or something. But I'll just show you how she showed me to do it. So basically, the fascia, you want to start off in the kind of the center of the cheek here. When you want to kind of use your thumb. Like usually people will use their index finger, but it's a little too pointy, and it hurts quite badly if it's your first time doing it, and it actually hurts quite a bit most of the time. But I have a lot of tension in my face because of the dystonia. So I use my thumb because it's a little bit less pointy, and it has a lot more strength, like when I'm really having to push against the tissue in my face. So I usually start in the inside of my cheek, and right at the center here there's a band that you want to feel for, kind of this band. It's going to feel kind of like if you push against your hand here, it's going to feel like that. It's going to be like that amount of that kind of tissue. So you're going to feel it's going to be kind of tough, and you just want to push against it, and you have to hold it. You have to hold it as long as you can until it releases. So sometimes it can literally take, up to 5. Sometimes even for me, it took 10 minutes of holding it there, and it's not a beautiful process. It's just sitting there with your thumb in your mouth the whole time. But I push against the tissue until it releases, and so it can be quite painful because I think a lot of people, they start off by like I at first was like, why is this taking me so long? And it's because I was being too gentle. And when my specialist worked with me on it, she was quite aggressive. But she said, if it's too painful, like, if you know that it's hurting too much, then you got to stop. But there has to be a little bit of pain there because the tissue takes a lot of pushing against it to get it to relax. And so you just kind of hold it in these little trigger points. So most people will start up here and kind of go in a C form. Like they'll go up here and then around to the back of the jaw and then back down. The way that I feel that helped me most, which my specialist did with me, was starting in the center of the cheek here. And there's a band right here in my cheek, and she would start there, and she would push up against it with my thumb on the inside. And you can see I'm holding it quite. I'm going to poke it out a little more so you can see how kind of aggressive I am. And yeah, it hurts when you do it. So it's just one of those things where it's like the tissue is so tough. You got to be a little rough with it, but you got to be careful. That's why I for the longest time I worked with a specialist before I even tried doing it on my own. But I would push against the center of my cheek, and then I would work my way to the back of my jaw, and then I would go back and start up here and work on my way back, and then start up here and then work on my way back to the back of my jaw. Once it got to the back of my jaw, you could tell that's where the most amount of tissue builds up, because it's near our mandibular joint. Because just like the joint in the wrist, from what my specialist told me was that we build up tissue in our jaw joint just like we do in our wrist. And people who build up tissue in their wrist, they develop carpal tunnel because what they're doing is they're constantly moving their hand. And there's tissue in there that builds up to try to protect your joint from damage. But the thing is, it becomes maladaptive over time because the tissue builds up so much, it actually starts to restrict the movement in the hand and starts to cut into the nerve. And it's the same thing with the face. The tissue can build up a lot in the back of your jaw, and this can lead to problems like TMJ, temporomandibular joint syndrome, where a lot of people have pain back here. So as she was working towards the back of my mouth, I noticed that I started to it was so sore back here. Like, I could tell that the most amount of tension was in the back of my jaw. And I was actually quite surprised because at the time, what had happened, I think it was my second or third year into rehabilitation. And I was I didn't think I was pushing myself that hard. You know, my playing was improving in leaps and bounds, and I was really excited. But I started doing things that, you know, I probably shouldn't have been doing. Like, I'd jump right away into like a Mahler excerpt and be like, yeah, I could do it. You know, I could play in the high register. But I still suffered a lot in my mid to low register because of the dystonia. So my camera's going to probably run out here in a second, but I'm going to keep film another video if it does. But basically, yeah, I was pushing myself a little too